Hello, couples, and welcome back to the Empowered Couples Podcast, where you get modern, non-boring relationship advice so you can communicate like pros, fight smarter, resolve conflicts faster, and ultimately, stay on the same team no matter what challenge comes up. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you can just remember us as the Freemans.
And on today's show, we are talking about reconnecting after a big fight, the do's, and maybe even more importantly, the don'ts. So, Jocelyn, where does this topic come from today?
It actually came from two places. One from our life, which we'll share about in just a minute, but also from the DMs. If you're new to listening to our podcast, our topics come from you. We get DMs on Facebook, on Instagram, and we answer your questions. So this actually came from, I hope I'm not mispronouncing it. I can only see the IG handle, but Isha, she asked in the DMs, can you include in your podcast about how to talk after a fight? How to listen and accept each other's perspectives regarding a situation that has led to a fight. And I loved this question because it's very intentional. Like, how do we reconnect after a fight? And it was perfect timing because we had one of our biggest disagreements, to be honest with you all, last week, about 10 days ago. We shared about it on our web show as well, but we'll talk a lot more about it today. And so it was perfect timing that we got this question, right, Aaron?
Yes, thank you for asking this. And as we jump in, I want to start with another review, as we've had such great reviews. And by the way, if you review a episode or the show, we'll do a drawing at the end of the month. So that one's coming up in 2 weeks. But one I wanted to read came from T. Millie.
Yes.
And I thought this was so great. It said, Breakthrough Podcast as the title. This new podcast format, so obviously this person has been listening for a little while. They love the new format where we take topics from the community, and it's by far their favorite. I get so calm when listening to these short, quality messages from J&A. Love how we're now J&A. And I look forward to adding this to our date nights. So that's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Having, I think, relationship growth be a part of a date night is a huge thing for relationships. And then lastly, really like these specific takeaways. Asking for what you do want, no blindsiding, don't wait a long time to share. The goal is to ask for permission or is this a good time in order to prevent them from getting defensive.
Yes.
Actually, they're putting a lot of great content in here.
They've been listening.
Thanks for helping change my thought process and making my relationship better. And the one-on-one call with Jocelyn and Aaron is 100% gold. I tell you, gold. Oh,
Absolutely.
So they did a
relationship breakthrough session. So glad that you did. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for that review. We read every single one. And to be honest, we want to reach more couples, and the best way is reviews. So if you're listening to this, please go write one and you'll get entered into the drawing, as Aaron said.
Yes, which is coming up. And by the way, just a shout out for our live show, which you talked about. We do a live Empower Couple show every other Friday. So jump on there. We have some exciting things coming up where we are actually releasing our book title.
Yeah, our second book, you guys, is coming out, and we haven't told the public what the name is, what the cover looks like, and anything about the pre-order. So you can actually watch us. It'll be now not this coming Friday, but the following, and you can watch it on YouTube. So actually, Aaron will put the link in the show notes, so you can click it, or you can go into YouTube and search the Freeman's Relationship Experts, subscribe to the channel, and then join us live. It's like a talk show for your relationship. It's super fun.
Yeah. So let's jump into this topic,
Yep.
right? This is such a great time period for this. Reconnecting after a big fight, the do's and the don'ts.
Yeah.
First of all, I wanted to say why this is important.
Yeah.
I mean, what does a fight do to you? I just want to preface that. And it disconnects you. And what we'll talk about today is it's important for the length of time that you stay disconnected.
Yeah.
That's the primary thing. I mean, reconnecting after a fight. How long is that going to take you? Is it going to be 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a couple of days?
Yeah.
So the thing is about the length of time that you stay disconnected, because the more you stay disconnected, well, I mean, just look, the less love you have there.
It creates distance.
It creates distance, but you probably feel that energy, so it impacts your kids. It impacts how you interact with them. It
How you show up
impacts
to
your
work.
It really impacts your entire state, and it can then have detrimental impacts into the relationship.
Yeah.
As the longer that goes, the more resentment you might build, the more meaning and story and significance you start to bring to these things. And the more you do that, the more frequent fights you'll start to see yourself get into, because you, in your mind, you're like, this is how it's been going. And it just gets more significant
Yeah.
from there.
I was going to say, too, for you listening, we have other episodes that will do more prevention-based advice, because there are actually 3 stages to a disagreement. There's pre-conflict, during conflict, and post-conflict. And we go much more into this in our book, actually. But today is going to be all about post-conflict. So here you are, you had the disagreement. So prevention didn't work this time. How do you reconnect? And I wanted to share, to your point, it's like, I know that when we had that big disagreement a couple weeks ago, in that moment, right after, where we were just taking a little bit of space, cooling down, in my mind, I'm thinking, how long am I going to stay in this? How long am I going to stay mad and also feeling guilty? To be honest, that was a big feeling. Was like I wasn't proud of my behavior because it was definitely not my norm, how I talked, what I did. I mean, as we shared in our web show, it got more escalated than we normally would let into our relationship. And so I had guilt, and that could have had me almost create more distance because it's like a shame cycle of feeling that and also being resentful. And so right after the disagreement, you're kind of, how long am I going to stay committed to distance versus committed to coming back together?
Well, yeah, it's a great point you bring up. Let me ask you this then. So we got the importance, and really with the aim of shortening this time period, what keeps you in that? What keeps you from reconnecting? What keeps you or stops you from reconciling?
I mean, as I said, guilt was a big one, and also just feeling resentful. Those were the 2 biggest things going through my mind, and really not. I guess I'm not sure exactly how to say it. Is there something right there for you?
Oh, well, yeah. I've been looking at this for this week, knowing this topic was coming up. So, I mean, really with the audience, like, put yourself into that place where you've had this fight, you're in this time of disconnecting. What stops you from reconciling? For me, it's like, sometimes it's, I shouldn't have to be the one because it wasn't my fault. They/you, I mean, whoever, put your partner in that spot. My partner did something, and it's they caused me to feel this guilt, shame, disconnection, and so I'm not going to be the one. They need to be the one to do that. And it's honestly like, when I look at it, that's a pretty strong piece. And then the one other piece I see for myself, like getting totally honest, and I'll let you go, then I want to say something else about this. There is a point I feel where it's like it would just be easier on my own. You know what? If you want to have that attitude and you want to act that way, fine. Like, I'm out. It doesn't mean like I'm out from the relationship. It means like, go handle your business, and I'll handle mine. And that's the feeling that's there for me, like, in those moments.
Well, thanks for being authentic about that. I think a lot of people probably nodded right when they were listening, because most people don't talk about that kind of ego in us that wants to be right and that is okay with division. And that's what, I mean, think about how many people kill off a relationship or kill off connection, let a disagreement linger for days because their ego is keeping them from just going, let me acknowledge my part of this. So I was going to answer one more piece, and I know you had something. I was also thinking about, in my family, and people have heard a little bit more of my story, but my parents, when they got divorced, which their fights were really, really intense and very escalated,
during that time period, right?
Yeah. I associated fighting with something's wrong and can lead to divorce. So part of what happens right after a disagreement is like my brain goes off and goes, oh my gosh, something's wrong. Is something wrong with us? Is this bad? And I go into this like bad guilty. I mean, I think guilt is the biggest thing that shows up for me, or fear that something's wrong. And then I kind of go into a fight or flight, more so the flight mode after the disagreement. Yeah,
I was wondering when you were talking, is there any sense of being, I'll use the word scorned, as in like you're being scorned by like a parent. In those moments, it's like, and I will go into this, right? Part of the don'ts, but it's like when your partner is now saying, and I'm giving the answer away, when your partner says, you did this and it caused me to feel this way, they're blaming you. It feels like a parent scolding you.
Yes. Oh, I mean, that's what I said when we were debriefing after our big fight was I have these almost flashbacks of being quote unquote punished growing up. And so that's kind of sometimes what hijacks my brain right after a disagreement is kind of, and I almost do feel like a little kid going into like, I did something wrong. The way I acted wasn't good. Yeah, that's really what shows up.
Yeah. So all of you listening, I'm sure you resonate with at least one of those. Mm-hmm. The point is just to start to look when you're in that period, notice what is it? If you can just like separate yourself and like look at it objectively, like what's happening, what are you feeling in your body? What are the thoughts that you're having that are saying to you, it's not my responsibility or I don't want to reconnect. Just start to look at that. So then this is what I thought about before we got on today. As I mentioned, in those moments, it seems like, fine, do your thing. It's like just easier. Handle yourself.
Oh, dang.
I'll handle myself.
Ooh.
And it's like, you know what? It's easier on my own. And then your mind can start to say like, it would be easier if I wasn't in a relationship because we wouldn't have these fights, blah, blah, blah. This is what I thought of today. Is it easier to be by yourself? Yes, it is easier. But are you in for a life that's just easy?
Ooh.
I mean, think about any other area of your life. Like, are you in this life for it to be easy? Having no growth, staying the same? No, that would be literally so boring. So is it easier? Yes. But to be in a relationship, you can become the best version you could ever be. So you can have it be easy, like anything else in life, working out, or you can get better. You can become a better person. You can experience more love, more connection, learn more about yourself, have more compassion, grow, and that's what a relationship allows for. So is all of that just like come by default or natural? No. So it's not like easy, but isn't all of the benefits worth it? That's what I thought about today.
Wow, powerful. Thanks for sharing. That's the first time I'm hearing that today as well. And it actually made me think about, just to make sure it's clear for everyone listening, after a disagreement, the goal is how quickly can you reconnect and fully resolve it emotionally. It's not how long can we feel like be holding out on each other and get into a stalemate. So just remember, like listening to this, it's okay, you're going to have fights. You're going to have disagreements, especially quarantine. It's bringing up a lot of different emotions for people. So how quickly can you get committed to reconnecting? Let's actually get into the do's and don'ts.
Yeah, so we have three don'ts that we'll start with, then we'll give you the three do's for right in this time, how to reconnect after a big fight. And the first one is don't say I'm sorry to just move on. Yeah. Meaning sweep it under the rug.
It's so good because I know that I always kind of wondered why after we would just say I'm sorry to each other, it didn't quite feel resolved. And I was always like, why is that? Like, that's what you always, just say I'm sorry. Just say I'm sorry. Admit your fault. But I'd always be like, but that doesn't really feel like it completes it. And it feels like it still leaves room for it to come up again.
Is that a chapter in the book?
Well, maybe we're covering that in the book. I'm sorry doesn't really complete it. But why do you think that just saying I'm sorry is just a way people try to get past it? Or why it doesn't really work?
The way that you said that, that's why people, I was thinking that's why I'm not even going to say people, like, well, we don't do this one as much anymore. But people, and in the beginning, say I'm sorry to move past it because they don't want to feel that emotion that's there any longer. They don't want to, like you said, the shame or the guilt or the scorn. You don't want to feel that. So you say I'm sorry. Basically, you can hear yourself saying, let's move on already. Okay, can't you get past this? So the reason that we're saying don't do this is because, well, for one, it doesn't seem that authentic to your partner after a while. If you just say I'm sorry and you don't complete it, meaning you just move on, it's a way, going back to a few episodes ago, it's a way of invalidating the impact that it had on your partner. Yeah. So it's just like, I'm sorry, can't we just move on? It really invalidates them. And then when you say sorry in the future, it has this sense of not really meaning anything.
Like, are you sure? Because you said I'm sorry 2 weeks ago when you did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but you just did it again. So are you actually sorry? Or
it's like I don't believe you.
Exactly. It does lead to that. And we're not going to share then the do for a minute. So let's go to the second don't, which is don't expect or wait for your partner to initiate reconciliation. And this was a big one, actually, in that disagreement that we had. I'm just going to do a little bit of a tap on my shoulder because
you can do a bigger tap on the shoulder.
I initiated reconciliation even though I was really hurt. You know, there were some things that were said and done that like honestly felt like one of the biggest things that's happened in our relationship. But like I said, I was having this dialogue with myself after going, how long am I going to let this last? What lesson is there really in this? And I remember going, even if you think you're right, this is my self-talk, even if you think you're right, even if you're mad at what he did and what he said, be the one. Be the one to initiate. And it wasn't easy. I had to set aside my ego big time. I know I keep mentioning ego, but I've been doing a lot of ego work lately and a lot of reflection on that. Again, the ego is that part of us that wants to be right and create, division and right and wrong. And so I was just like, I'm going to choose to be the one to initiate. So I kind of shared a little bit of myself, but why shouldn't people just wait for their partner to initiate?
Well, it's a certain level of imbalance. I don't know if I have a clear answer, but it's a feeling. It's an emotional feeling where the other partner feels like they're the ones that always has to initiate. And we just came up with this one because if you want to get past fights faster, I don't even know that you need a reason. Basically, I'm sorry, we were getting into the do's. Don't have it be imbalanced or don't be the one to wait for your partner to initiate. So I was reflecting on this for myself, and there was a period of time where I felt like, it was a small period of time where I felt like I was initiating more. But if I'm honest, right now I feel like it's 80-20. And I really was reflecting on the numbers that you initiate the reconciliation.
Come on. You guys write that one down.
The 80.
He's giving me
and
credit.
I'm the 20. And so I just have this feeling that it just kind of puts me in the passenger seat. Like I'm more passive when I'm like waiting for you. And then it also has this undertone, I feel like, of that it's the other partner's fault.
Right.
So the main thing with this, I think, is it keeps a certain level of separation. As this was your fault, you should reconcile. It's a much smaller I identity of me against you, and so you should reconcile versus stepping into the we, in which case be a leader. Like be a leader for the relationship and just an initiate.
Yeah, I was also going to say that at an emotional level too, that if you both are waiting for the other to reconcile, this is the word that comes to mind, it just almost disintegrates. I know that's a pretty powerful word, but it like disintegrates this bond, this friendship. If you keep doing that over time, just keep waiting and it keeps becoming longer and longer and you're just waiting, there's going to start to become this sense in the brain of like, do they actually love me? This distance is lasting longer and longer.
I feel when you said that, it's like it doesn't create a environment of safety or like security.
Yeah.
So then obviously we're getting into like the do's. The opposite would then be true. Like the more you initiate, the more your partner will feel safe and feel it's okay to have fights, knowing you're going to reconcile.
Yeah.
I think that helps with that. So let's dive into the third don't here. And that's, which we've already kind of covered. Don't blame your behavior on what they did.
I got to cover this one a little bit.
You did this, so that's why I did what I did.
Which is, it's funny because when people have asked us a little bit about how to reconcile after a disagreement, they're like, man, it's so hard for me to go into trying to resolve it and not go, well, can you apologize for that behavior? Because if you're not able to apologize, I can't apologize for this because I only did this because you did that.
Yeah.
And then that's when people don't actually resolve it emotionally and it comes up later because you're excusing your behavior. So we say, don't blame your behavior on them. Here's why. You did what you did because you chose to do it. Your partner cannot force you to act and be a certain way. You might think that you only did it because of them, but that was inside of you. So you have to take responsibility for how you showed up. Sure, maybe you were triggered and that isn't your norm and how you would have acted. And yeah, maybe they did something that really hurt. And so you think it led to this behavior, but you've got to be honest with yourself. There is a way for you to have the type of power where you just know you acted that way because you chose to act that way.
Wow. Yeah, I think we should move right to the do's.
Really?
I don't think there was anything else to say about that. That was just that straightforward.
So don't go to them and say, well, I wouldn't have done that if you didn't this. That's not going to fully resolve it.
And how you're going to be able to do this is with some of the do's, because that seems hard, and it can be, and it is hard, especially if your partner isn't quite on the same page with how to reconcile in this way.
Yeah.
Because it can feel like you're taking all the blame, or it just starts to feel like this admission of guilt, and then it almost feels like it's always your fault. And that's the thing, that you do need like both partners really working in this together. So let's move into the 3 do's so we can actually kind of cover that. And the first do is discover the real root of the cause. You're not upset for the reason you think you are.
Yeah.
We say that statement a lot. Can't remember exactly where we heard that from, but if you think about it, this is a great opportunity to share something I was thinking of earlier. So you may have been thinking, okay, what are Jocelyn and Aaron talking about on the biggest upset that they've had? And I can imagine listening to a podcast like that saying, oh, what big thing happened, right? If you hear anybody talk about it was like the biggest fight or upset that we had, immediately you think of it had to have been like a big breach of trust or something, when it literally wasn't that. We talked about this on the live show. It was as simple as I was on a phone in another room talking to my friend, had a great conversation. I came back into the living room where you had been like researching things that were going on in society and culture and things like that. And we talked about the effect that energy has just on yourself and then your state when you're with your partner. So then you basically just told me, in my experience, like, you shouldn't say this the way that you did. Because
I overheard him.
And then so to me, it was like a little wobbly, like, I'm not only in the other room, so why are you telling me like how I should be having a conversation? So that was the basis of it. And so you might think, well, that's not that big of a deal. It was how we handled and the actions that we took and the behaviors of the things that were said and done after that.
Yeah.
So that is to come back to this point. You're never upset for the reason that you think you are.
Meaning it's not about the dishes. It's not about the socks. It's not about them being on their phone. It's not about the action that they're usually doing. Okay, sure, maybe that applies if like there's infidelity or something, but like Aaron said, it's not always these big things. So there's a deeper root cause, and that goes back to, this is like the opposite of the don't just say I'm sorry, because when you're just saying I'm sorry, you're also not getting to the root cause.
That's true.
So that you're not able to prevent it next time. It's like you're almost missing out on the lesson. There is a lesson in your disagreement. What can you implement next time? And so even in that root cause, we talked about I was not having healthy boundaries around news and media, and I was letting that fear creep into my mind and my nervous system, and so I was reactive. That was one of the root causes. And also it was a week where we were giving each other too much feedback. We talked about that as well. So like there were a couple root causes to why, number one, it not only got triggered, that disagreement, but why it got so escalated.
Yeah, and just one for me personally is I do have this underlying, which if we were to talk more about personality types, which is another podcast episode for sure, but I have this underlying root cause of avoiding being dominated. So when I feel something is being said to me that's trying to control or dominate me, I have to take full responsibility that the action that's being taken or what's being said by you in this case is not trying to control or dominate me. But like in my mind, in my subconscious, in my body, that's what I feel. So at the root cause, I need to be responsible for when I feel dominated and controlled.
Yeah, good point. So for everyone listening, that's Aaron's kind of one of his root causes, how he shows up in a disagreement. But for you two, after a disagreement, you're not just saying, I'm sorry. You're going to sit down together and evaluate What was the root cause for us? Tackle it as a team rather than it be like, no, you caused it and you acted that way and I was better. What was the root cause together? Sit down as a team and figure out what that was so that you can implement something next time.
Yeah.
Can I go into the second one?
Well, just say to try to find it, it's going to be something around some sort of fear you have, some sort of not feeling safe, something around feeling you need to survive, a place where you felt not only just disempowered, but like unsafe. Just a couple places to look.
Yeah, definitely. Those are a couple. Okay, so the next one of the do's, after you're sitting down and discovering what the real root cause was, this is big. Acknowledge the emotional impact that your actions had on your partner and what was really there for them. So it's really about acknowledging them, and then ideally they'd be acknowledging yours. So this is why, we know it can't be just one-sided, like you're working on healthy conflict and your partner's not. So, number one, hopefully they're listening to this as well, or at least they'll follow your lead. This is big because just saying I'm sorry isn't acknowledging the real impact. You have to be able to set aside your own perspective for a second and understand what it might have been like for them. Like put yourself in their shoes and go, if I was them, having been talked to the way I talked to them and what I said to them, what would that impact have been? Acknowledge the emotions, which, Aaron, would you even share a little bit about like why maybe for men it's more challenging for them to acknowledge the emotions?
Within the partner?
Like why men maybe have a harder time sitting down and being with their partner's emotions.
Oh, well, underlying, I believe that, we don't take the time to think maybe at that level. It's usually thinking at the action that was taken and then wanting to move past it and fix it, all so that we don't feel the emotion of disappointment or sadness or disrespect, or like we just don't want to feel the emotion that is there because it seems scary. It seems like, I guess I would ultimately say it almost feels like the relationship is in a bad place. And I'm like really just getting this newly right now because if you feel that emotion is there, it does feel like something must be wrong. Like something in this relationship isn't right. Subconsciously, should we be together, or does this mean that they don't want to be with me? So I think there's a lot of insecurity there to acknowledge that emotion. So one, you do have to feel safe enough, like you're in this relationship, it's not going to like end, that you are going to get through this, and then you can sort of enter into feeling those emotions, with your partner.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And it also made me think, so if you guys were there with us sitting in the living room while we're kind of trying to talk again, reflect on the disagreement that we had, which all this happened within an hour. Again, remember the whole premise to this podcast episode is you can reconnect faster no matter how escalated the disagreement got. So we actually sat down to reconnect and reflect within an hour after the disagreement. And so if you were a fly on the wall sitting with us, you would have seen us going, hey, Aaron, share with me the impact, the emotions that were there for you from what I said and what I did. And as I'm sitting there listening to him, my old self would have wanted to invalidate or would have wanted to be like, oh my gosh, I need to prove you wrong, because if I admit to that impact on you, that means something I did wrong. Again, it kind of goes back to that like whole, I don't want to feel like I did something wrong and be punished. So when you're sitting down listening to your partner's impact, the impact that it had on them, here's what you got to remember. By acknowledging it, which is basically saying like, I hear you, and kind of repeating back to them. I definitely hear that the impact on you was that you felt ... It doesn't invalidate yours. Your perspective, how you felt, is also true. You're going to hear us say this on like 5,000 podcast episodes because it could take a lifetime to really let that sink in. Acknowledging the impact on them does not invalidate the impact on you. You both had your own experience of the disagreement, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the big things is the positive intent, like the intent probably that the action was taken mostly everything is taken from a good place. And so that's one of the things I think people argue about in this particular situation is that's not what I meant. You shouldn't have taken it that way. And you try to argue for what's right or wrong rather than just saying, oh, I took this action. Even if you had a positive intent, I took this action and it had you feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to just get that simple. I did this and that had you feel that way. It doesn't matter if that's logical or not. It doesn't matter if what you did was in the right. You have to just get, you took this action and it had your partner feel that way.
Yeah.
Like it just has to get that simple.
And if you're hearing us say, you know, these examples of how to acknowledge each other's emotions, and you're like, wow, I wish we could communicate that way, or, oh, I have a hard time imagining how we might do this, it actually is a good time before we go to the third do to actually share a way that they can see more of this modeled for them. Because a lot of times what is helpful for you listening is, yes, to listen to us, but also to see us kind of like act out these scenarios. And we actually do that in the recorded couples workshop. So I think we should just tell them for a minute that, you know, before quarantine, we actually held in-person events every single month in Arizona, workshops for couples. We miss them so much, you guys. And we actually had that recorded in a professional studio. I mean, it almost feels like you're in the room with us just because of how professional it's done and how it's filmed. And there's worksheets to go with it and exercises. So it's actually almost like you're there for 5 hours with us, but you can do it at your own pace at home. So you can actually get access to the recorded couples workshop, and you can choose to do it on a Saturday. I mean, heck, this weekend we were looking for activities to do. I'm sure you are tired of Netflix on the weekends. So you can either block a weekend day, do the whole workshop in a 5.5 hour time frame together, or you can split it out. It's actually broken up so that you could do an hour and then another week do another hour. But either way, just for the next few days, we're offering that for 50% off. So go to thecouplesexperience.com. I'll repeat that again, thecouplesexperience.com, or go to the link in the show notes. Get that for 50% off. I'm telling you, people have actually said they would have paid 10 times the price for it, for the exercises. And we actually act out more of how to do these things so that you can see the right way and the wrong way to communicate and resolve conflicts.
Yeah. Powerful time to do this. Couples Workshop Home Edition.
Absolutely. Okay. So with that said, go check that out. Absolutely. And then let's get into the third do for conflict resolution.
Which goes back to the don't of not waiting for your partner to reconcile or initiate reconnection. And so that is that as soon as you are ready, initiate reconciliation. As soon as you are ready, not when your partner is ready, when you are. And so the question might be, well, how do you do that? Well, it's really something to explore for yourself. You can do it through physical touch. I think breaking the physical touch barrier is such a great first step.
Yeah.
Because typically when you feel disconnected, when you have a fight, you know, you probably have your arms like crossed. If you're sitting or walking, you probably have like physical distance from each other. So to actually get closer and break the physical touch barrier is for sure one way to start. But you might even just ask some questions like, are you ready to reconnect yet? Right? So just questions. This one I thought was really good. I've been using it for myself, is to ask, or actually to say this, I'm ready to reconnect when you are. So let me know when you're ready.
Yeah. I love that you brought up too, starting with physical touch, because I know that, you know, in the hour after a disagreement, I might not be 100% ready to talk yet because I may be still processing. There's like emotion moving through my body. Remember, emotion is energy in motion. So you're feeling all kinds of energy moving through your body. But when you go to touch my back, you know, or my shoulder, and you just say, hey, I'm ready to reconnect when you are, it starts that bond again. There's something really powerful energetically about physical touch, and it releases hormones. I mean, there's a lot of studies to show like what happens to both animals and people when there's physical touch and when there's not. And so I love that you brought that up. Like, even if you're not ready to talk yet with each other, just touch each other. make sure that they know you love them, touch their back. And then, like you said, I love those prompts of, hey, I'm ready to reconnect when you are, and I'm actually going to do a post this week on some prompts for initiating reconciliation. Saying something like, hey, I've had some time to reflect and I'd love to share with what I learned, about what I said during the disagreement.
Yeah, major thing here is you cannot rush your partner's time. So also don't be selfish that the reconnection happens in the time that you want it to, that you're ready. And I see this a lot and sometimes feel it for myself. When I'm ready, it's like I feel in this good state. So I initiate a reconciliation with a physical touch, and I'm expecting you to switch your state just as fast. When, if you're not ready, and that initiating a reconciliation goes sort of turned away from, or we could say rejected, here's the thing. I think for a lot of men, this is not a one-time thing. You can't hope to initiate the one time when you're ready and expect your partner to be just all set and ready to reconnect. And then if you get that feeling of like it got rejected, you're like, okay, fine, I'm out. And you're just as mad again. It's not going to be a one-time thing. If I was getting this newly this week too. If you're going to initiate, be ready that it's 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 different times. You can't get upset that your partner is not on the same timeline as you.
Boom. Love that. I think let's do a quick recap. So to reconnect after a big fight or even little, okay, you can apply this to both. Remember, the goal is to have that reconnection time happen faster. Over time, faster and faster and faster, okay? Not like you're trying to race, but that's the goal, not have it last too long. So the don'ts are, don't just say, I'm sorry, to just try to move on. Second, don't expect or wait for your partner to be the one to initiate. Third, don't blame your behavior on them. Would you read the deuce?
Oh, yeah. Take the time to sit down and discover what the real root cause was. It's probably not the thing that you think it is. It's not the dishes. It's not the little glance or thing that they said to you. There is a root cause, something around a fear, something around an insecurity, being unsafe. And that leads you to then having to acknowledge the emotional impact that your action did have on your partner. Not right or wrong, not who's right, not that what I did should not have had you feel that way. The fact is, it did.
Yeah.
So you have to just acknowledge, oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't my intent. I did this, and I get it had you feel that way. Have to get that acknowledgement of the emotional impact. And then lastly, initiate the reconciliation. And it's not going to be maybe on your partner's time. It's not going to be the same time. So initiate with some prompts, some physical touch. If they're not initially ready the first time, you got to be willing to do a second, do a third. You can't get mad if they're not ready when you are.
Yeah, so good. Well, I hope that you all took away a lot. And don't just have this be something that you listen to and go, oh, that was nice. Implement even one of the do's and stop one of the don'ts. And that'll make a big difference. And here's the thing. Our humble request is that you share this episode. Right now, actually, we did a survey. 85% of people said they're fighting or disagreeing more during quarantine than before. So your friends need this episode. And if you would share it to your Insta stories and tag us, we're Meet the Freemans on Instagram, we'll add you to the drawing. We'll add it so you're going to get a great gift at the end of the month in the drawing. Or text it to them, but share it. And when you tag us, we'll put you in that drawing. It really is something that people need to hear. People are not posting about it. Here's the thing. People are posting the highlight of being at the pool with their family or watching Netflix. They're not posting about the disagreement. But they could be silently struggling with having a big disagreement and not knowing who to talk to because they feel guilty or they don't know what to do differently. So our request is please share this episode.
Yeah. And review also. We would love to read your review here on one of the podcasts. And also, as Jocelyn mentioned, our goal is just to have this advice, more so these relationship skills, simply skills, modern skills, non-boring, be things that can be implemented in a couple's lives. The way that happens is honestly through reviews.
Absolutely.
More couples, actually you will play a part, you the listener will play a part in couples having a better relationship around the world. Little side note, we noticed the podcast had reached like New Zealand.
Yeah, there was Singapore, and let's see what else.
A couple of
Scotland,
Asian
I think.
countries.
Yeah.
Really cool. So by reviewing, that gets to couples around the world.
Yeah.
And that is a part you can play in helping relationships get the skills needed to, here we go, communicate like pros, fight smarter, resolve conflicts faster, and be a team no matter what challenge comes up.
Absolutely. And in closing, if you are wanting to go deeper in this, take advantage of that 50% off of the Recorded Couples Workshop. We don't always have it 50% off, so go to thecouplesexperience.com, and we can't wait to talk to you all on the next episode.